Hello and welcome to the Beth of Fresh Air. It's March 27, 2026, and here we are, still being. And I'm happy to have Mr. Micah Ellars on with me again today, a filmmaker, a coach, a teacher, and a wise person who has studied the work of Gurdjieff, which we've been deep into in the House of Free Will. So we're going to talk today about pattern hunting, my favorite subject of all. And we're going to see it through Micah's eyes and the eyes of Gurdjieff, who has also, has his own take or way to describe what we're talking about. So without further ado, I'll bring Micah on. Hello, Micah. Welcome. Oh, you can't hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I can't hear
You
you.
can hear me. Oh, that's
Weird.
weird. And I am
Yeah,
not.
the sound went out.
Okay, give me a second.
Let me see.
Could we have someone in the chat let us know if you can hear me? I'm breaking up, Jackie says. And
Okay. I fixed it. It was somehow it got disabled. Yeah, you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. And it looks like I've got my right things set up. Beth sounds good on your end. And you can hear Micah, Eliza says. Oh, and we lost Micah. That's okay. So no doubt he'll be back. Poor guy. Pushing a lot of buttons over there. Probably hit the wrong one. So am I still breaking up? Jackie K, thanks for being here, by the way. And Micah is back.
Correct. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Yes, excellent. So the yes, I believe, is that you can hear me, or maybe it's breaking up. I don't know that I could do anything. Everything is kind of set right on my end.
Okay.
But welcome anyway to Elisa. I'm glad you're here. Hopefully the sound cooperates with us today. And breaking up still, darn it, that sucks. What could be the reason for that? Let me just in case my computer is having a spurge, I'm going to try to close some stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's all I can close. So, darn it, hopefully it goes better. And you could, Elisa, can you also let me know, since you're in the chat, if you're also hearing me break up, just in case it is a local thing with Jackie? Or Micah, if you talk?
Yeah. Testing. Is that good? Okay.
And Liza says it sounds normal on her end. Okay, perfect. So at least one person can hear us well. And yeah, I think it's going to be clear. It sounds good on my end. All righty. So today we're going to jump in. We're going to talk about what I refer to as pattern hunting. The title Spotted, meaning there are ways we go through our life, and I'm learning to speak, of course, in lots of Gurdjieff words these days that they're so useful, that we live mechanically and we go through motions and we just act on automation. Classic example, I remember as a child, my mom would say that sometimes she would drive to work in the morning at a god-awful hour, 5 a.m., and she would get there and then she would come to, like, who drove the car?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so habitual. That's the nature of a lot of our lives. If you're not an outright rebel, turning your life inside out, upside down every single day, then you're likely to be caught in some of those kind of automations. I also use the word automation to refer to programming, which is very much in alignment with that mechanistic way of living. So, and Jackie K, sound is good again. Excellent. That's good. Like to hear that. Welcome, Michelle and Maya. Great to have you guys here. And Micah as well. If you're not familiar with Micah, he is someone I've come into contact with in the last year. He's a filmmaker. He's done some really amazing work. He is a teacher and a coach, a writer, and teaches people in the film world. And hello, Mary. Diane. I know you to be Diane. I hope you don't mind me saying your real name. You have to let me know off the airwaves if there's a different way to talk about you online. And so I've really enjoyed having you, Micah, in the House of Free Will and entering into these discussions. We've done a number of snippets now. I think there's 5 recurring snippets on the work of Gurdjieff. And so when I asked you last night, a little bit of a late invitation, but I appreciate you being here, then you said that there were ways to talk about the, finding patterns in our lives and how they play out through the eyes of Gurdjieff as well. So I'm glad that you could join me for this.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, you're welcome. So one of the things that recently brought this topic to mind for me is that there are certain, and you can let me know if you have this experience as well, but there are certain experiences that definitely repeat. One of the poignant places that happens for me is with my son. And there was, in the early days of his life, I had a variety of dreams and inner experiences, and just trying to figure out my relationship to my son and being a parent and getting all of the reflections, the mirror on steroids back at me about who I am. And I remember having a dream at one point that there was that I had a big fail in a past or a parallel life, who knows what it is. And this could be literally just my imagination, so I'm not putting any validity necessarily in it being past life. But there was the memory of a very big fail with him. And it was as if I was using this lifetime to make up for all those fails. So very interesting. There are recurring patterns that show up, particularly in traveling, where you're out there and you're not controlling your environment, and things are not predictable. You got travel schedules and all kinds of things that go off, and the inability to read a map is kind of on my place on my or it's one of my things. And then so yeah, there were different trips where I got us into some trouble, not really knowing or understanding or having the sense, that, oh, I'm like 22 and I'm traveling and I can get into any kind of trouble, get in and out, put myself in all kinds of weird situations. But when you're with a young person, it's different, right? There's a whole different dynamic. So, we ended up in a weird place in Costa Rica with it was considered a hostel, but it was very strange, and it really freaked Liam out by that point. Like I didn't take him off-roading. I didn't take him into third world countries. I know a lot of parents did that, and it just wasn't my way. I was definitely more trying to protect him. So here we are in a relatively unprotected environment and in a strange place, and we have to be overnight, and it was like weird. And I remember getting to our room in the hostel, and the floor didn't connect. If you stepped on it in a certain place, the whole thing would go sideways like this, and you start realizing like that the door lock is irrelevant now because people could get in through the floor and stuff like that. I was up the entire night. I'm holding my head. I'm literally going through what feel like past life experiences. I'm having big revelations. I didn't sleep a wink, but it came alive in the morning. Everything resolved. I felt like I got a degree overnight in self-awareness. And then it's happened a couple more times, and it just happened on our latest trip, where what we expected to happen didn't happen, and we ended up again whoosh off into the world with no plan, with no reservations, with no nothing, getting in some kind of pickle circumstances in the first night, staying in a very dodgy, dangerous kind of hotel. And so it's just interesting to see that the patterns, how they keep coming and they keep bringing up in you the things that are not yet noticed, or they might be noticed but not healed. So that's what I was just going to open with story-wise. And have you noticed that kind of thing in your life as well, Micah?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, yeah. I think we attract the same situations over and over again. We kind of gravitate towards them. They come in and orbit us, and until we change, the pattern doesn't change. And there's something there.
Right. Yeah. And that was something that came up the last class, since you're in creator code, somebody asked, or I was asking, what's the purpose of seeing the patterns? And they said, so the patterns could be broken. And there is a certain truth to that, in that, you do want to have a new experience. That would be great. That is there in potential. And but what I've noticed is that the patterns continue to recur, that they are hardwired, but the pattern itself evolves and
Mhm.
changes, right? So what, say back in the days of, when we were in Costa Rica, my son had major meltdowns and freaked out, and became unreasonable, where in this iteration of the same exact pattern, he showed up more like a superhero,
Mhm.
and everything was like, I can do this and I can do that. And he's forever, we were stuck a few times financially, just not having, expecting to ride Ubers and those kind of things. And he just whips out his phone and he pays for it and he orders it and acts really empowered and on the ball, taking care more of me, in fact, than I'm taking care of him, so that he's an adult. So things can shift and change and evolve before your eyes. And I think that's the bigger goal of the whole thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think the pattern, it always comes back around, and that's where you get to see where you've grown when you revisit it, when it recurs.
Exactly. Do you believe in tests? And does Gurdjieff talk about tests of your character, tests of your faith, for example?
I mean, yeah, I personally think that in my own like experience and what I've witnessed with many people, the test does seem to come until you have a chance to pass it, and I think that it's the easiest. So from my perspective and experience, kind of what like I bet what a lot of people could relate to is usually in like romantic relationships, people, if you're the outsider watching someone go through the phases that you've seen them go through the last four relationships, it's you can almost predict exactly what's going to happen. Um, and then sometimes you'll see when the person actually is working on themselves or working on change, they'll still re-experience the same type of X again, or the X themselves will come back into their life so that they have a chance to experience that growth and transition. It seems to almost always happen. So I would agree that it does happen, and sometimes at almost a spooky cosmic level where sometimes it's beyond chance that those things repeat. I've seen that happen a lot. And, however, not everybody learns the lesson, not everybody grows. So sometimes it just becomes, we all know those people that, maybe they're on their like fourth or fifth marriage to the same alcoholic, or the same abusive spouse or whatever it is, it's the same patterns over and over again. From the outside, you're like, can you see the common denominator here? But so I do think that that does happen. I do think that there is a conspiring of higher forces to help us learn those lessons, because I think that that's part of why, at a higher level, why we're here. Um, Gurdjieff, they're inside of like his teaching, his students, especially like Ouspensky and Morris Nickel, they really focused on this word recurrence that was used, and recurrence is fractal in and of itself. A lot of people apply it just to the concept of like reincarnation, right? Like, but recurrence is based on the concept that your being generates your reality, and so the pattern stuck in you then magnetizes and gravitates towards that pattern existing outside of you, and that's why like only interchange is the only way to change the world or your life. And we've all seen the geography fallacy where people try to break a pattern physically, like, okay, that's it, I'm moving to Kansas, or whatever it is, another country, bigger city, a small, more rural place, something extremely different or novel. And we all seen that they go to Bali for 5 years, and or they live in those kind of hostels that you're talking about all over the world, and they think that like, oh, I've changed so much, and then yet the same pattern. It proves the point that like you can't leave yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And that's almost always how people first find patterns in their life, is in other people.
Mhm.
So when they're with a partner or a spouse that the relationship isn't going well, if we follow that thread of romantic relationships, then they'll like, oh, this person has this defect and that
Yep.
personality disorder,
Yep.
and they're not nice to me, or they're not generous, or whatever it is.
Yep.
And then that's exactly it, that they're like, oh, okay, this is not my beautiful relationship. I'm going to go find a new relationship, like you said,
Yep.
change my address.
Hmm.
And then you can see how clearly, again, the seeing of other people's patterns is really easy. And then they just literally go and recreate that in a different circumstance, until they realize, like you said, that they're at least part of that dynamic, if not the common denominator in every situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And like when with those types of things like personality disorders, for example, those are kind of easy to understand on a magnetic spectrum where you have, the positive negative polarity. So, i- like, let's say, and there's a lot of like psychological literature and evidence on this, but say you're like say you're always finding yourself with narcissists or psychopaths or sociopaths, right? Somebody who would be on like the far, say, positive side of the magnetic spectrum. Well, then that would mean that it's because of your deficit in the other side. So you're probably like severely like a codependent enabler. You see, like, and so from the illusion is that it was them and their fault, when it's like, no, 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 that's just your compatibility, that's what you're resonating with. And the only solution would be to change yourself, which is incredibly difficult. It's a lot easier to just be like, well, no, they are a narcissist, they were diagnosed, they are bipolar, they're medicated for sure, you see. And then that allows the ego to protect itself, and that allows us to stay arrested in development. That feels really nice because then you haven't, it's them, it's their fault, it's not me, I was the good one, you know. And
Exactly.
that's the language. I mean, you can tell me if you've ever had an exception to this, but most people you meet, that's exactly how they talk about previous relationships.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I have a friend, a good one. This isn't to call them out, but they're dealing with a psychopathic narcissist, unfortunate, close person, someone you can't divorce from, actually, because of the circumstances. And then it's like you said, you can't have the narcissist without the, whether it's the empath or the, like you said, codependent. And then all of the time and energy went into studying the dynamic of a narcissist,
That's right.
right? Like, so just video after video, it became this consuming
Yep.
tracking, and studying how do they work, in the hope that you're going to maybe outsmart the narcissist, or you're going to overpower them, or somehow in this, it's actually a programmed drive to figure out other people and their
Mhm.
problem,
Mhm.
that all of the energy gets consumed all of the time, and then you're left literally the same. You are still ripe for exactly that same pattern to repeat in your own life.
You just can talk about it in a very eloquent way to gain sympathy from others and to bolster your own victimhood. It's,
Exactly.
it's kind of like, if you look at it a different way, it's like, um, why do I always keep adopting rabid dogs? Right? It's like, well, I don't know, but that says a lot more about you than it says about the dog.
Yeah.
Because it's like pretty obvious when they're rabid, so it shows you're already in a very hardcore denial, of yourself. And that's how we are. I mean, that's what we do as humans, and that's the natural mechanical way that we are grown up and reared in this world. Blame is almost always the first. That's a pattern you can notice, is that you see it in others easily, but like to see it in yourself, blame is almost always the first response to anytime you're triggered or annoyed or feel threatened, there's always blame. This person shouldn't have, I shouldn't have, or it's always, and we all, when you really start to observe yourself, you can see, wow, blame is like faster than lightning. It's really fast.
Exactly. Yeah, your brain immediately starts looking, who's to blame? Who's to blame?
Mhm.
Who's to blame? And then if you've got some spiritual conditioning, you're probably going to blame yourself,
That's right.
knowing that it's, politically incorrect to blame the
That's right.
other now,
That's right.
that you should know better. And then yeah, the potential there is to swap the blame for responsibility. That's
Mhm.
how I started to dig myself out of my cancer diagnosis in 1999, just because my first questions were who's to blame.
Yeah.
And I had a list as long as my leg of who was to blame. But when I was smart enough to ask who's responsible, I could only come up with one answer, and that was me.
That's right. Yeah, it really is, because you're the only one that can do anything about it really anyway. So like, that's the truth. That's the fact, and the power is in that. Blame isn't necessary. Like, yeah, maybe it was the flame retardant in your RV that you lived in for 7 years in the lining of the walls, and maybe that's the main cause. Who knows? Who knows? But that doesn't do anything that disempowers you, to like to not take responsibility, which is, well, what can I do about it?
Exactly. And that's how we use figuring it out, right? That's how we use that program, is to, again, leave everything completely unchanged, to grind, to use a lot of energy, to go
Yeah.
through a lot of motions and
Mhm.
get nowhere at all, fooling yourself that you're actually getting somewhere.
It feels like you are, though. It feels like you're a detective when you go down, especially in those relationship ones. Now you have all this ammunition and firepower, and you've learned all the truth. It's kind of, in a way, it's kind of like when you go too far into like conspiratorial thinking for something. It's like, okay, cool. You've done 2 years of a deep dive now into these, this hidden secret society and how they've infiltrated and done all this. That's fine. It may all be 100% accurate and true. Let's say it is. What does that change in you?
Exactly.
Take away years of your power. I'm not saying it's bad, but you start to see it as a net loss. But it feels like you're getting somewhere. Oh, I'm figuring it all out. So okay, now you figured it out. What are you going to do about that?
Right. You're in exactly the same position. It's like that with your health as well, right? All the
Yeah.
all the questions. I got into that a little bit yesterday and found the programming, let that go. But just when I get into stress and I get in situations that are not really good for me, one of my body's responses is to lose weight
Yeah.
and disappear. And so I'm in my mind like, why? And it was interesting because when I was releasing on it, I did
Mhm.
find a death program that was it. I honestly, I don't know if it was just metaphorical or if there's some reality to it, but it was that it was like I was being eaten. I was eating myself with that program.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that was fascinating. It's not the answer to the figuring it out. It's just like, oh, there's the program not doing me any good at all. Could I let that?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. And
Yeah. Yeah. Really good. I'll just say hello to a few people in the chat. Hello, Lupus. Nice to see you. And Mr. Cyrus is here. I know it's not the same without Quietly Content Bear. We're missing her, so you can send some telepathic messages. And yeah, we are creatures of habit. That's that mechanistic kind of way of being. Michelle said doing the inner work is a whole lot like defragmentation of your computer's hard drive. It's time consuming to reorganize programs to make them more functional and well worth the time. Nice. What do you think of that metaphor? Does that match up with?
I think it's great. It takes time. It's inconvenient, because just like with a computer, in order to defragment something, then if you've ever defragged your computer, that means you're not doing anything else with
Right.
it. And so,
Very
like,
good
wait, I
point.
got to get this done. I got to do that. That's often too why we feel like, well, I have to put off that self inquiry, because you intuitively know it's kind of a big deal. And it actually is. And so that's a good analogy, because those resources have to be given over to the defragmentation process, which means, hey, you're not going to be crunching other programs. It's not going to be a time to make hay.
Exactly. You got
Yeah.
it. Yeah, it can literally, you don't know. It's a can of worms, right?
Yep.
That
Yep.
when you open it, you have no idea how deep or how big. It
Mhm.
can go both ways. There are some times where I suspect something is going to be big and, long and hard, and it's just this little blip. It wasn't what I expected at all. And then the opposite where I think, "Oh, that's just a little thing." I go in and holy mackerel, the
Mhm.
contents, it's like show-stopping.
Yep.
And, yeah, and especially when it comes to seeing patterns, then the potential is, of course, you don't just see pattern in one place. That's the nature of patterning. You will
Mhm.
see it in Technicolor everywhere,
Yep.
and it has the potential to overwhelm you. That's a shadow of the child I'm gonna be teaching about this week.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, it can be a showstopper if you are not prepared for it. So that's one of the reasons to at least be aware of the nature of the work, that those kind of things can happen. And it's a great example what you're saying. Like if you defrag your computer, that's all it's doing for a little while.
That's right. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember the older days where you had to do it manually more often, and sometimes you would just watch the time bar get longer and longer. You're like, "Oh my God,
Right.
14
It
hours."
grows.
Yeah,
Right.
like, oh, like and it's like that. The experience of doing that work on yourself is like that, where you don't know the can of worms. How deep is this thing gonna go? How big is it? And there's a lot more worms in there than you thought, and they're a little more tangled than you thought. And that's actually a very common pattern is this notion when people get started on something like that, they embark, they have an aha moment, or in like recovery it's called clarity. They get to clarity. Okay, I have a problem, I need to work on this thing. Then they go a little bit into it. Maybe we can get into that later, like with the Gurdjieff octaves, but it's like they strike the note do, which is the beginning, and then they have the Ray, the implementation, and then me. And then it gets to that point, and that's usually the point in which everything fails, because uh, that's where sufficiently more energy is needed to continue up the process. And I'm sure you've seen this with your many professions that you've experienced. People, a lot of times, people can start just like they can start a project. When they start themselves as a project, it's the same kind of thing. Like, oh, I'm going to work on this, and it might be diet. That's a common one. People give a couple of good weeks to their new whatever diet or health, changes, and then you see it fall off because they didn't anticipate that it was going to be harder than they thought. And it sounds nice when it's all up here, it's intellectual, but when you actually have to live it and see that the fantasy wears off quickly, and then it's like, oh, this is work. And that's why, just like that defragmentation, it means nothing. You're going to have to make a lot of sacrifice, but the bigger picture is now your machine is better.
Mhm.
So
And you become much more efficient and clean, like a clean engine, right? That will use fuel efficiently and get a lot more potentially done.
yeah.
So, yeah, I think one of the big mistakes that people make when it comes to personal development and healing work and all of that kind of thing, growing spiritually, is that there's a sense it's somehow one and done.
Yep.
Say if we draw the parallel to the physical, oh, I need to cleanse. I got a sluggish liver. I'm going to do a weekend cleanse. I'm going to drink a bunch of oil and stuff and make myself purge. And then, whoo, I'm so clean now. It's all
Yep.
done for the year or whatever that is, right? And now every single time I talk to somebody who's considering this work, I throw in, this is the work of a lifetime.
Mhm.
And this is just the beginning, like you said, that point where people realize where, okay, I'm not breaking through on my own, or I'm not going fast enough on my own for my own liking.
Mhm.
And then yeah, they'll inevitably take some steps and they'll dip their toes in the water and run away, or they'll dip their toes in, they'll do some very difficult work and go like, whew, that's over. I had one client who was, he was used to being able to just basically master anything. He could come in, and whether it was his resources or the resources of the team around him, he could conquer anything.
Mhm.
But then he was sick and he was told he was going to die.
Mm.
And he faced something that he couldn't conquer by just getting resources and taking action and all of this kind of thing. So he lands on my doorstep. He did very, very brave work for a short time. And then he decided that was over, that was behind him. He already knew that, and he didn't need to keep going. And then ultimately, and I can't say the cause of anything. I'm not God, but he did end up dying of that cancer down the line that was in remission for a short time while he had breakthroughs. So yeah, it can be daunting for people that they're going to have to spend the rest of their life doing this.
Well, I think it's when, the pattern is, so you're not observing the truth that there are bigger patterns at play. You're ignorant to them, which therefore you have no chance of changing them at all. Like if it's not observable, you can't change it.
Exactly.
And that's very congruent with everything that like Gurdjieff taught in a fourth way. It's all about learning to observe and identify, bringing consciousness to something that was hidden. And the thing is, with like probably the guy, whoever you're just referring to, your client, um, what happens is this fractal. So a lot of times we identify a problem. Like this will be easy to explain back to the romantic partner. Let's say you finally figured out, okay, you were with a narcissist, which everybody says they were these days, right? It's become very trendy. But okay, you're with a narcissist. They were diagnosed. You studied it. They had all the hallmarks. You were abused. All these things. Okay, great. When you hear that a lot, and then that person will then think that this is an isolated event to the one relationship that they have. And they may say, well, the reason is because I had an issue with my mother and I was attracted to a woman like this that could do this. And they're not even aware yet that that pattern is going to be through their entire life. That same dynamic, the like codependency enabler with an abusive narcissist, right? They're not going to see it. And I've seen people, I've had mentees and friends and stuff that have been through these things. You can see that they see maybe this one problem, and then their brain wants to compartmentalize. Okay, my only problem is this one romantic relationship, and then they make up reasons why it happened. But you can see, like, when you really understand it, it's like this is your whole life. No, this isn't the one relationship. That's just one fruit off of this tree. That's one manifestation of a massive pattern in psychology. And so like to like your client's story or case, once they get a little bit of leeway, it would be like fixing that one relationship. Look, I broke up with the toxic person and I did therapy. Okay, great. You get this illusion. Yeah, maybe you did make this one little small change, but it's almost like you got rid of one rotten apple on a tree of 1,000 other apples that is your life. And that's the part that they are still oblivious to, because they don't want that to be the case. We want it to be like, all I needed to do was get a pressure washer and pressure wash my back patio. Look, I got all the mold off. Everything's great. And then it's like, oh, cool. My house is clean now. And you're like, well, you still have mold in your ductwork and you still have mold, and it's like that. And I think that's probably the little success gives us like it's almost like it's a false hope, to where we think, oh, wow, I figured it all out. I'm healed. Like you said, it's the weekend cleanse. Hear that all the time. People always tell me, man, I'm really working on being healthy right now. Oh, I'll say, what are you doing? And it's always, I'm going to do a liver cleanse. I'm going to do a microplastics cleanse, a metals cleanse. Okay. And then that means they're taking some herbal supplement or protocol for, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Exactly. And making no real changes of any kind in their
No.
life.
So it's going to repeat. The poison's going to repeat. They're going to intox all over again. They probably aren't even detoxing anyway. You know what I mean? They're probably not even getting that accomplished. They're just, and it's all the same thing. It's like we do that throughout our life because we're in an argument with reality, that reality is supposed to be at our convenience.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a constant argument with reality. That's beautiful. And then when people get those shorter term results, so like even if we go back to the weekend cleanse kind of thing, well, that might be 2 days they stopped intoxing, for example. They stopped taking in foods, and then you do feel better, or you manage to suppress the detox, and then you feel better. It becomes this like fake sense of success that turns into a belief system.
Mhm.
Oh, those weekend cleanses, they work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And then you keep bumping up against the same symptoms and the same problems, and maybe they slowly grow. That's another problem, that accumulation of whether it's inner or outer, like physical or mental, emotional toxicity,
Mhm.
it accumulates slowly.
Yeah.
And your whole system, whether psychic or physical, is trying to die slowly, right?
Mhm.
As opposed to dying fast.
Yeah.
So it just becomes a massive argument with reality. You got it. Very well said.
Yeah,
Elise,
I would just kind of, I could say one more thing about
yes,
that. It
please.
just came, here's kind of an analogy, is that the more ignorant we are to ourselves, it's almost as if we've learned to see one twig sticking off of one branch of a tree that is us. And we think that is us, like this one twig that we've been staring at because our vision is locked in on it. And we've studied it and studied it, and finally we do something, we snap that twig, or we do something to it, we graft something onto it, whatever. And then we think, oh wow, I've done it. We don't understand like how completely oblivious we are to the entire rest of what makes us what we are. And so like you have thousands of other twigs and hundreds of other branches, and it's really that we don't understand the totality of things. Like health is like that. I mean, if you've ever studied health, it seems really simple at first. It's like, what do I do? Oh, eat more granola. Okay, cool. Eat more granola. Look, I bought the organic granola cereal at the grocery store, and it seems so simplistic. And then it's like, oh, and then my doctor said, take this, take some cholesterol medicine, whatever. And it becomes this really simple thing, and it's like the twig. And then, but that's where most people are at with their self knowledge, and so they don't even understand all that. They're it's like the ignorance of what they're even ignorant of. And I think that's why there's so much confusion and suffering around this, is because we've all like identified with this one little twig.
Yeah, yeah, you said a lot there. That's we've like are literally trained to see things in compartmentalized portions, and there's the capacity, right? We don't have the attention, we don't have the time, we don't have the focus. And then so yeah, you just end up having a little photographic memory. You get this photo and that photo and this photo, and you think that that's you, but the wholeness of you is totally, completely lost. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, really well said. So yeah, Elisa said blaming is like germ theory for your emotional maturity. That's really well said.
That's good.
Yeah, Michelle said, I'm not sure that thought came out right. You meant to say recognizing patterns makes executing them or junk filling them becomes faster, but not necessarily easier. Um,
I don't remember that
yeah, I
part.
don't remember either. What you said before made sense though, so that's all right. And Lisa said, I'm getting better at feeling the first warning sign, gut sense, sinking feeling, though. That's really good. Yeah, first signs. The first signs are a gift of patterns. They're almost always a small sign of some kind.
Mhm.
And if you liken it to your health, where there's a little niggle in your throat, or a little, you're a little tired, or there's some indigestion or something, those small signs. It's not over the top. It doesn't leave you, you know, in bed all day or incapable of doing things. But those small signs are always such a gift of a bigger pattern that could come. I remember that when I was getting sick with cancer, I had tons of signs for probably, I don't know, 3 to 5 years before the big diagnosis came down. And because they were small, I could ignore them. I could override them just using caffeine and my spiritual techniques to transcend my
Mhm.
physical body, which is a big mistake.
Wow.
And then I waited for a stage 4 lymphoma diagnosis to actually start the change process.
When you say that, kind of only because this is such a good way to illustrate these things, could go back to the romantic relationship example. Everybody that I've ever known that's been in a toxic or unhealthy romantic relationship, including myself, has when it's over and they're when they're digesting everything that's happened, they always knew almost immediately there was a problem. It was a small, little, tiny, just like those things you're talking about overriding. And they're so small, but like the pattern recognition technology, and it goes ding ding, hey, or your intuition, which is recognizing some other kind of more nuanced pattern, goes, whoa, 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 wait a second. And we're really good at overriding it. And then you realize, like, man, if I had just listened to that, which really that's the secret to having better relationships, is you got to listen to that little voice in the beginning, because it was there. But our pattern is to suppress it. Our pattern is to talk past it and to force through it. Yeah.
Right, right. And because we have an inner trajectory for freedom, I would say non-negotiably, like we're all heading there, whether you cooperate or argue with it, then is it also that we are meant to see, there was, I'm remembering something one of my teachers said at one point, not that he's super credible. I can't even give credit, but he said, drive your car into the mud and sink it.
Mm.
Like rather than, oh, there's a mud puddle, I'm going to go this direction. He says, like, no, drive it in and sink it. And I think it was pointing to that, can you otherwise avoid seeing the grand pattern inside yourself if if you're always listening to the little signs and avoiding the calamity, would you miss really understanding the pattern in yourself?
Well, yes and no, because the reason that you're dodging them in the first place is because you haven't learned the bigger lesson.
Right.
It's like the archetype thing conversation we had about the alchemist and the child. It's like when you understand the role of the alchemist ultimately, then it changes the relationship to being the child, because once you have achieved that wisdom, you would never ignore those little signs. Like, it's like going back to the rabid dog analogy. It's like, oh, look, I saw foam in the corner of the mouth of the dog. Maybe it was having a milkshake before. You just like, okay, that dog has rabies. You don't need to learn that lesson all over again.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
like a client that approached me, and in the first conversation, he said he was diagnosed with a psychopathy. And that was after that, and all of the bad fallout and things that really weird happened. I made a note to myself: if someone proclaims that they have been diagnosed with a psychopathy, I'm going to take that very seriously and listen to them. And people do actually tell you the truth. That's the one thing, hey?
Oh, I have an anecdote to that. Yeah. So
Right.
like years ago when I was managing a restaurant. This one waitress, she was very experienced, and past her middle age years, had been a very beautiful, pursued woman, worked the restaurant industry and all that. And so she was very good at judging character. And she told me one day, she said, people will always tell you exactly who you are when you meet them. You just don't listen. And ever since she told me that, I noticed, wow, that's what we do. People literally out themselves. They're like, oh yeah, yeah, I was, I got I got arrested for hitting my spouse. And you're like, and we make excuses. Oh, you seem so nice though. Like, yeah,
Exactly.
but it's there. It's
Yeah,
there.
you're healed, or I can heal
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. I can heal.
You're-
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
You seem like you've really grown past that. Yeah, well, but
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I was seeing my patterns just going to the store yesterday. I felt really good to be back in my own space and with the House of Free Will and all the clients that I work with. It's a sort of like comfortable place for me, but I just go out to the grocery store. I go into traffic, and there's so many things. I was amazed the scale of the triggers for me just in a normal drive. Like, it was just humbling, actually, because it can be tempting to think that stuff is also behind me.
see, that's where that's like in the fourth way. That is the why it's the way for a householder, because the idea is that you're in normal life and you're letting life become your teacher. Because you're going to get triggered. You're going to get annoyed. Someone's going to cut you off in traffic and almost kill you. And, and it gives you a chance to observe yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I should drive all day now instead of doing the work I do. I'll go free faster. Yep, and you like the reference to defragging. It's always good to metaphors, and in fact, the computer metaphors are strikingly uh, accurate, because why we designed the computers based on our own inner workings. So there's a lot of really good analogies there. And yeah, trying to change the narcissist is like trying to change the weather. Yep. They don't, most people don't change. That's the reality of it. Even if they're not full blown narcissists or psychopaths or anything like that, generally it takes energy, right? This is something that you said. It actually requires more energy, right? Do you want to talk about that a little bit? How Gurdjieff talked about shocks and
Yeah,
development?
sure. So, okay. So in the, basically, if we stay into material science, what would be kind of like scientific determinism, there's a well-known concept known as entropy, right, in physics. And that it's things move towards a state of lower energy and less structure. They become chaos, right? And so, but oddly, when you see life, you see existence, something is not doing that. Life is living, and well, that's not entropy. Yeah, we die, but at some point we're not dying, we're growing and we're progressing, and at some point we're evolving. So something is moving counter to that. That part's not talked about in physics. That would come into the Gurdjieff work for sure. But the, basically, the shock is, so maybe, okay, maybe if you want to pull up the Enneagram,
Sure.
the
The
Enneagram
circle one.
symbol. Yeah, yeah.
That one? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So we talked about this before, but this was the shape this was the geometry that he revealed that he was given from the Sarman Brotherhood. And it's the merger. What it is two charts that merge the law of three and the law of seven, which are two foundational sacred laws of immanence. So everything that ever existed is coming. So the law of three, all genesis of creation, there cannot be change in this reality. Nothing can be done without three forces. A simple example of that would be at the smallest level of material science, we have atoms, right? You have a proton, neutron, and electron, a positive and a negative and a neutralizing force. And so without those three, nothing can exist. There's no manifestation of matter, for example, without those three forces. And every single thing that ever changes or exists or manifests in any way, any phenomena is based on three forces. Okay.
Can I
Sorry.
stop you for one
Yeah,
second?
yeah.
So when you say positive, negative, and neutral, can you define what that means?
Sure. So the neutralizing. Okay. So another way of thinking is active and passive. So positive and negative doesn't have to be like, oh, love and light and evil, right? And then neutral, somebody who's a modern day Buddhist or something, right? No, it's not. It's not that. It's it's the fact that in the physics of it, imagine a magnetic polarity. There cannot be a magnetic field without both a positive and a negative. If you take a bar magnet and you cut it in half, it is immediately two magnets,
Mm-hmm.
right? There is no, the third force is the very thing that they're emanating from, called the neutralizing force, right? So with a I don't want to get too crazy into metaphysics and stuff, but it basically, like, if you take a magnet, you can't see the third force, which is really the null point, which takes them into what would be known as counter space, or you could kind of call it the ether, right? But and according to the law of three, you can only ever see two of the forces at a time. You can't see the third force; it's always hidden unless you. This is part of the fourth way work. You've learned you work on developing third force sight. But naturally, we're third force blind, and at the planetary level of the 48 laws that we've talked about before, we can't see third forces.
Okay. And
Does
of
that
those,
make sense? Or do you? Okay.
yeah, yeah. Do you mind if another question that the third force you can't see, is it always the neutral you can't see, or is it that you might see the neutral and the positive and don't see the negative?
There are some examples where that's not the case, but it's usually that it's the neutral, the neutralizing force. And I'll give you, so here's one more example that might help relate this to this whole idea of patterns. So it's taught that man asleep, he has his active force, which is his personality, His passive force, which is his essence, the neutralizing force is life. So life, as it has its own patterns, just like the weather changes, we have day and night, we have politics and economics and all these other large scale forces moving things around that we have no control over whatsoever.
Mhm.
If our personality is active, which is the vast majority of mankind, um, they are a machine driven by life. It's like life is turning our gears. We have the illusion of having agency, but we're just victims of reality. Then so the goal of like the fourth way was the awakening process of flipping the active force from being personality and the passive force of being essence, like this, so that essence becomes active and personality passive. They both cannot be active. It's just like the magnet. Okay,
Mm.
there must be both the positive and negative. So it's which way is your magnet oriented, and that's going to be determined by the neutralizing force. So in the fourth way, what happens is you learn to disconnect your neutralizing force from life and make it what's known as the work, or the fourth way. And when it becomes the neutralizing force, it flips the polarity for you. It's like you have a magnetic precession. I hope that is that a simple enough. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and I'll draw a quick parallel
Yeah,
that,
okay.
from the work of Lester Levinson. He would say our problems really all boil down to the fact that we forget to want freedom. And when you remember enough to want freedom, there is a flippening, which
Yes.
a word you coined, and it's exactly that, where freedom starts to pull you, and yeah, the forces are going to organize more opportunities for your freedom, which doesn't necessarily mean what you want. Just in case.
No.
Yeah.
No, but it is a new place in your consciousness, like through your work, that people get a taste of. And in the fourth way, it's called self-remembering. That's the place that very congruent with what you call freedom in yours. And the idea is that you have to remember yourself. And first of all, remember that you're not remembering yourself. You're in your example earlier that we talked about with a car ride. That's the easy way to see. Like, I wasn't even conscious for 2 hours driving my car.
Right.
I was daydreaming or talking or planning or whatever it is, and um, but you certainly weren't very conscious. And that's a good example of, wow, something else was driving me.
Yeah. Exactly.
How we are to all of life, we don't realize it yet. Like, we're like, our thoughts, our feelings, they're being driven by life itself.
Yeah. Exactly. Very good. And do you want to talk more about this, Doug?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So okay, so to keep it like just introductory here and simple. So imagine that law of three that we just talked about. It would be represented by those numbers 3, 6, and 9. Just like Tesla said, the secrets of the universe are the 3, 6, and 9, right? So the 3, the 6, and the 9, notice that they're actually separate from the other lines that are drawn. Okay.
Mhm.
So the Enneagram was the merger of the law of three and the law of seven. And it shows that there's a symmetry and an overlap to both of them, and that the two synergize to create um, all of the phenomena of creation and all of the entropy. So so now if we go to the law of seven, which is the principle of octave, easily understood by musical scales, right? Like, every 7 notes, the eighth note is now a new octave, right? And all of music and harmony is based on that. Like, uh, how sounds resonate with each other, it's based on that principle. Um, so the law of seven determines. So we know three represents the three forces. That's the genesis. But the structure or development, the evolution or devolution, is the law of seven.
Mm.
And so once something has been emanated, it then must be, it either must grow or it must atrophy, right? Now, if you look on that chart right there, if we go in a clockwise fashion, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But that's useful for some aspects of this, and we'd have to really get into a more advanced breakdown of it sometime to do that. But to keep it simple right now, we're going to go to the other points that weren't the 3, the 6, and the 9. And you'll notice that number 1, if we start at the point number 1, imagine that you go from number 1 down to number 4. Okay, that would be do re, right? And then 4 to 3 would be like re mi, right?
4 to 2?
I'm sorry, 4 to 2. Thank you. I
Yeah,
misspoke. Thank you for catching that.
that's all right.
4 to 2. And then
Testing.
yes, thank you. Then we go from 2 to 8, 8 to 5, 5 to 7, and 7 to 1. And if you just see those shapes, they create this symmetrical shape that has bilateral symmetry. And that represents the law of 7. What happens is, okay, so now can we flip to the other chart that I sent
For
you?
sure.
We're
Yeah.
going to look at it now a different way to kind of make sense in a more organic way or a hierarchical way.
Okay. Just give me 1 minute. So this
Okay.
would be the spiral.
Yeah. Yeah. It looks like loops. Yes. Oh,
Okay.
Is it? It's really zoomed in on my end. Is it? Or is that me? Oh, I think it might be me. I might just be zoomed in. You can see the whole chart, right?
We can see the whole chart. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Okay. I'll zoom out a little bit. Okay. So now this is the same thing illustrated in a different way. And this is, so imagine we're starting on the 1. Remember, we were up at the 1 and we go down to the 4. Okay. Now, if you think about that, 1 to 4 is an increase in value, right? But this is where the surrendering concept comes in that we talked about. You have to drop from 4 to 2, right? And at that moment, in that moment, you see the 3 that's coming in from the outside that's circled. That's a shock. The shock has to come in at that exact point. Otherwise, naturally, the energy is decayed and the octave is destroyed.
There you go. And that 3 comes from the force of 3, the positive, the negative, or the neutral, correct?
Well,
no.
It can come from it's anything that comes from the outside. So, for example, on a mechanical level, what's called the first mechanical shock in human biology, that would be oxygen coming in. The 4 would be the blood. I'm sorry, the 4 would be your lungs and the 2 would be your blood. And for oxygen creates a shock where something special happens between those two that it can then turn into a higher energy that's going to run your nervous system and your cells.
Okay.
Right. And so that's an unconscious shock. In the work of man ascending, that would be the first conscious shock, is self-remembering. Beginning to introduce self-remembering. You know how you're talking about, you notice things began to change through Lester Levinson's work as you started to become aware of freedom?
Become aware of, and this is specific. I don't know if it makes a difference, but it was to want freedom. It's not
that's
even,
what the desiring of it. Sorry, it's
desire.
not
Exactly. Yeah, just because that you can pay attention to freedom, and that just ends up being esoteric.
Yeah, it doesn't work in the intellect.
Right. Exactly.
And it's taught in the fourth way. It must be understanding can only come from the knowledge mixing with the valuation of desire. Will has to match it. Without that, it's just cerebral, and it doesn't. This is why the book knowledge can't get you anywhere by itself. It's the application. It's in the doing. So yeah. So my point is that 3 in like your work would be where the awareness and desire for freedom comes in your release work right there. So in the fourth way, that's self-remembering. And then if self-remembering meets at the right moment, when we're going from the 4 back down to the 2 in that surrendering moment, self-remembering comes in. Look what happens. That loops up and can go to the 8. Now you can go even higher in the scale. And then at the 8 must surrender back down into the 5, right? And a new shock must come in at that 0.7. And if that shock happens, then you can continue to complete the octave. So so if you look, and everybody's seen a piano keys. Those 2 points are exactly, so you have do, re, mi, so your first 3 notes, C, D, E, then you notice there's no black key there, meaning you cannot get there without something special. So it's almost like, imagine if you could only go the distance of the half measures, the sharps and flats.
Yeah.
There's a gap there. That gap is preventing you from going further without outside help. And that happens again, the next set of notes. So notice it happens twice in the octave in the exact same place here in the Enneagram, and introduced by the Enneagram.
Okay. And is that a metaphorical comparison with the do, re, mi, la, sol, fa, ti, do? Is that like a metaphorical, just like giving an example of something that we can relate to, or is there an actual relation to the sound?
Oh, the sound. Oh, that's a good question. Oh man. Okay. Yes, but that would take a long. Let me say, I'll just give a quick clue because to not make this a 25-minute answer, you have to know, first of all, what those things stand for. Most people don't. There's a little bit of entomology and esoterica there. Do you know what they stand for?
I do
Like,
not
okay.
offhand. No.
So, for example, uh, la, which in when you get into Latin, la is usually the beginning of like lactic, right? Lactose, milk. It stands for the Milky Way galaxy. Sol is the sun, right? Fa is the planets. Me is Earth or us, right? Like so you remember in the ray of creation you had absolute, all worlds, all all suns, the sun, all planets, and then the biological plane and man. So that's so yeah, there is something. There also is a phonetic or the sound example, but it's like that kind of goes way back, and then it's kind of been slightly distorted. So that's what I mean. It would take a long time, but yeah, you're right that they do have more significant. It's not just an analogy. It's actually okay because the Enneagram itself is alive. We're creating a formatory methodology of describing something that is a living geometry that emanates from a higher plane where um, that it's existing preeminent to space and time, and yet because of that, it shows up everywhere fractally, like the golden ratio, right? Like the Fibonacci sequence. It shows up everywhere as its fingerprint because it's a fractal.
Very good. Yeah, maybe that's something we can go deeper in the House of Free Will on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's blowing my mind. And Diane says, yes, it's fascinating. Bit over your head. I'm always in over my head over here, Diane. Just so you know, that's how we learn and grow. To just look at things that we don't already know.
It's in over my head. I mean, this is like beyond all of us. It's all we can do is it's kind of like the Fibonacci sequence. You can kind of be in awe of it. The more you study it, the more the more you're profoundly amazed by it.
Exactly. And is it possible also that it's part of that surrender, like down from 4 to 2, where you are in, you don't understand and you're okay with not understanding, and yet you're availing yourself to understanding.
That's exactly right. Yeah, which is plays into like the child archetype that you work with, right?
Hmm.
See,
Hmm.
it's there's a higher surrender, but see, the lower surrender leads to entropy and leads to evil. All evil and good are explained in this because if the consciousness is not brought in the right will, things decay and they turn to more evil.
Can you say that again?
So if the will, if your will is not um what you would call for freedom, this is for meaning, for significance, to serve a higher power, if that will is not matched at that correct time
When the shock comes?
when the shock is supposed to come,
Yep.
it
Okay.
leads to decay and entropy, which there's another way of explaining that is mechanicality. Things become more mechanical, more deterministic, um, as they spiral down, and therefore, according to the work or the fourth way, they would be more evil.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and so people almost always have a sense that, oh, I've done so much work, and I will
Mhm.
never discredit anybody for having done a lot of work on themselves, but there is an idea of like being able to lose that, or say not being able to lose that. I did that, I've got that, it's under my belt. But what you're saying is that it actually can turn, and I've seen that in people who had a strong growth trajectory at one time of their life, and then they abandoned it for one reason or another, and they didn't keep what they got.
No, no, and that's like the parable of the talents. You squandered what you had, or you chose to bury it, meaning to do nothing with it. And then it's like what it says, then what you do not even have will be taken from you. Right. We are given so many opportunities to choose consciousness, to choose that eminence, self-remembering in the work, freedom in your work, and we squander it. We squander it by choosing sleep instead,
Mhm.
choosing to be mechanical because we love it. I mean, we
It's
love
so
that.
easy.
Nothing. Yeah, nothing is ever going to talk you out of going through the McDonald's drive-through. You know, you're
Yeah.
never going to have that voice. It's like, come on, you can do it. You can order the the McFlurry and the Big Mac and the Biggie fries. Come on, you never have to do that. You have to talk yourself out of it, right?
Exactly.
The mechanical nature. What does it want? It wants that. You know what I mean? And we love that. We love that, or whatever our vices are.
Yeah, and then you don't have to face any resistance, right? You just keep giving
None.
over and giving over and giving over, and then like what you're already saying, but I'm just synthesizing. It's a
Mhm.
mechanical, gets momentum. It gets stronger, right?
Yeah.
Any addiction is like that. If you don't have any governor whatsoever, and you never deny yourself, and you always satisfy that that niggle, then you will end up deeper and deeper into that addiction.
Absolutely becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and you get further and further away. It gets more mechanical, it gets more calcified. That's why the older people get, the more everything's hard burnt in.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Less flexibility in their mind and body as well.
And to your point back about uh when you said, you see people say, oh, I've done this, I've done the work on myself. They haven't accepted yet that life is the work. Meaning, it'd be like saying, I've already eaten a lot of food, I don't need to eat anymore.
Exactly.
It's like, what but
Exactly.
that's how absurd it is to say that. Like, you
Yeah.
because again, our ego is trying to bend reality into what it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That was another the teacher I can't give credit to. Someone asked, well, how long do you have to do this for? They were in, oops, shit, what am I doing? Sorry, I hit the wrong button there.
Sorry.
Um, I'll just let me know if you want to bring this up again.
Yeah.
And they said, well, how long do we have to meditate for? And he said, the whole life.
Yeah, that's right.
He said, you never ask me how long you have to brush your teeth for,
Right. That's
right?
right.
Right up until the dying day, I'm still probably going to brush my teeth and not, because you don't even know if it's your dying day. And I still might want them tomorrow, those good teeth.
That's
So
that's exactly it. And we don't have the thing is, though, the stuff inside of our psychology we have the most resistance to, far more than brushing our teeth or even exercising and stuff. And it's so much so that it would be the most painful thing for some people to even see themselves. I mean, Gurdjieff taught that it would kill you actually instantly. That's why you have buffers, and then you can only take those down so little at a time as your consciousness is willing to face them.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's the word triage is always going through my
yeah,
mind, that there's a triaging going on, and you can trust that also, because a lot of people go into overwhelm at the outset. They don't even poke their head in. They don't find any path whatsoever to move forward on,
right.
and then seal the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just look at a few more comments here.
Mhm.
Jackie K said, we go in and out of hypnosis many times each day, especially when driving. I know it's amazing more people don't die and have accidents continuously on the road for what's actually going on in people's consciousness. Mr. Akili Curado is here, who has been on this the King Heroes Journey podcast a couple of times as well. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. And sounds like the flipping is creating from freedom. Yes, we have a new word, flippening, also, if you like that one. Thanks to Mr. Micah. And life is best when active. Exactly. Not to be just on automation the whole time and having everything effectively decided for you, right? That's where being an inner rebel can come in handy, that you don't accept that other people are making your decisions. This was something also we talked about in terms of influences in our last class, and how there's that over spiritualized simplification, or over simplified spiritual thing, that we create our reality. And it's like, yes, if you happen to be active in that role, how would you describe and explain that
Mm. Um,
in terms of creating your reality?
yeah. So remember that you're not doing anything if as been asleep, which is the default state. You have an illusion of creating, and that doesn't mean you can't be successful. Like Gurdjieff said, inventions are discovered, works of arts are created by a man completely unconscious and asleep, because those are the forces of life, of culture, going through you. You're just either fortunate or not, based on that, like, which is all the law of accident, right? So consciously doing it is learning to take responsibility, and first you have to want it. You have to want it and understand what's at stake. How can you want something if you don't understand what it costs, right? And then you pursue it, right? And then that would be then, so creator code, or creating from from that place of freedom, would mean you have deprogrammed everything. There's no machine running on it. It's coming from a higher path. So you have some sense of agency with it, right? There's
Which is
you're a little,
intuitively backwards, right? Like on a logic level, that would be backwards, but I'm hearing what you're saying.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing. Everything we see naturally is almost reversed and upside down, and that's kind of what screws up. That's what's hard for people to comprehend. It is like you're kind of telling them um, everything they know is wrong. We've got it all backwards, and that's where we're how we're conditioned by life. And I did want to say something that when you were speaking just a moment ago, when you're like in your book and in your work where you talk about archetypes, you have a progression of archetypes, right? Just like a color wheel, right?
Mhm.
We know like blue, goes into green, goes into yellow, right? We understand that you can't go from green to orange directly, right? There are other color. So your archetypes work like that. Now apply that to the Enneagram. There's a process of development. This is the process of evolution, which is the architecture baked into higher consciousness and reality. If we become aware of it, we can use it to shift up, but we have to go through those points. We can't skip them. And so like, um, conscious creativity is becoming aware of that process. It's learning to work with it instead of rebel against it. And that's like your work with archetypes. You see, it's the same thing. Learning the progression, learning like, because all the archetypes exist in your entire life inside of you at some point, and physically you're shifting through them as you ascend or descend in a development. You know, uh, just like for any type of knowledge, at some point we're the student, and then maybe at some point we get to be the teacher, and there's a progression in between, and all the steps in between have to happen, and then we can start over and be a student all over again of something else, or maybe even in the same work in a new way. And it's so that would I would say conscious creation is resonating or being in harmony with the higher architecture that you're usually oblivious to.
Right. And it's almost more a process if I don't know if you'd agree with this, but it's a more process of like noticing it
First
because
step.
it's
Yeah.
already happening. This has often been the case in say there's the spiral of emotions similar to the spiral of archetypes that have a certain progression, a certain order, and they're so observable. But if you don't observe,
Mhm.
then you're going to get caught up in the content of the thought rather than recognizing like, oh, I just went from anger to pride, which are two of the emotions, if you don't know my work already, that are sequential. This is actually from
Mhm.
could be David Hawkins, Lester Levinson, just so I don't claim that scale of emotion. But they're always right there. It happened to me exactly last night where I went from anger to pride. And there was a moment because pride can make you feel like, oh, I'm so smart and I'm a good one. I've
Mhm.
got this figured out. And then, I think, oh yeah, I've like solved the anger. It's like, no, I'm in pride. I'm just in the next. So now I need to work through the pride and find the program in the pride. And you can short in say in this system in my idea you can short circuit the needless going through the sequence over and over again by finding the underlying program that's tying up the energy, which I think ultimately ends up introducing a shock, right? When you release a program and the energy returns to your system, there's a whole new level of energy available.
Yeah.
And then that becomes the potential for new growth.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that way um, yeah, it's not like it, our mind wants to make it formatory, like, oh, you have to spend 2 years in child and then 2 years in nurture and two. No, it could be like you spent 15 minutes in one of those. Because of
Exactly.
your awareness, you start to gain that alchemical power of what do I want to do with this cycle? What do I want to do with this progression? You can accelerate some parts and you can slow other parts down. But that only comes through awareness and application.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And a certain amount of will and choice, like to even know that you have that
Yeah.
choice to move through something at a
Yeah.
certain pace. So, yeah, I've missed a lot of comments because this is a
Oh,
deep conversation that
well,
almost always happens. No, no, no,
go for
please
it.
don't apologize. No, don't apologize. It's so great. Just wondering if there's anything. Hello, artist seer. Nice to see you. I'm glad you're here. And yeah, back to just blaming the partner and complaining. I grew up around women who complained about the partners. That was something, it was just a constant cultural norm that if you didn't complain about your husband, you probably didn't have anything to talk about or a best friend because he had no subject matter going on. And yeah, it didn't get them absolutely anywhere. Yeah, exactly. And then Elisa said the curse of having a grounded partner like yours is that everything is generally your fault. Yeah, it's a funny thing when you pray for a partner and it's like, would you want them smarter than you or dumber than you? Because there's an advantage in the smarter. I bet Gurdjieff has something to say about this. That if you choose somebody that is more evolved on the path or whatever it is, then you're the one that's always going to be probably noticing your own lack of growth in certain areas or whatever it is. And then the other way around, being the one who's smarter, then you don't necessarily actually I want to turn this over to you. How would you see that situation in terms of potential for growth?
Like a disparity between you and your partner in something?
Yeah, yeah, like picking I remember one of my teachers of the past, the same thing. He says he always hangs around people dumber than him. Now he's
Oh,
being a
yeah.
little tongue in cheek because it's all his students are not and don't
Right.
have the experience that he did. So that sets up a different kind of potential for growth and learning.
Well, yeah, you would be stifling your own growth at that point because it's not um Gurdjieff was big on people getting people underneath them and people above them so that you learn to have people and become comfortable in both directions. Um you know, just like how we talked about before, it's not possible for you to go to the next level in development until you've brought a certain amount of people where you're currently standing. And
Right.
and you can't get to where you want to go without finding the person at that level. And so it's a progression like that and learning to accept that about reality. Oftentimes people is again, man number 4 is the first step is to become a balanced man. Someone not just in the 3 centers but in many ways in life. And he did talk about sometimes people would come to the work with him and their partner wouldn't. And he would say, "Well, take it as work." You might rapidly be progressing in some ways, but it might be good that they're triggering you and it might be good that they're not. And it doesn't have to be that they don't have to be on the same level, but you can use it either way. If they're ahead of you, you can use it. If they're beneath you, you can use it. I think oftentimes a lot of people, I'd say more often people like to find people beneath them where they feel smarter. I've seen this happen a lot in relationships. Gives them a sense of control. Um, you know, but what does that tell you about yourself?
Mhm.
You're afraid of being vulnerable with someone who might actually be able to be your equal. You don't want to be called out, right? So
Exactly. Yeah, especially with the persona of a teacher. I'm a teacher. I'm the know-it-all.
yeah,
I'm comfortable in my role, and everybody just needs to get to where I am. And then your students. And I remember being a student of that person, and I was a growth factor in their life, meaning I was a pain in their ass. right? Like I didn't just humbly sit and take it in. I was a gnarly teenager, young
Mhm.
adult, and yeah, I gave him work. Now I don't know that he necessarily took that work on. That's his business
Yeah.
to do. But yeah, it's exactly right that if you always hang around people who are less developed than you, it gives you less opportunities, but it probably gives you equal, in some ways, opportunities if you receive them to do
Yes.
the work. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and even the Bible says that, say, if you get, if your partner, if you come to Jesus, but your partner doesn't stay with them, it says, stay
Mhm.
with that partner, not go find some other Jesus loving partner, but stay with the one. Mhm.
Yeah, you're already in that situation. It's like the point is to work on yourself. And then the only way, if you want to change the world at all, if you want to affect people around you, then you change. And anyone that's ever seen change outside of themselves, it's because they did something. You
Yeah.
don't have to say anything. I mean, you're just, I mean, sometimes this is going to sound crazy, probably not to your audience, but your your energy field that you carry with you can affect someone else. Like people that worked with Gurdjieff would be changed in his presence. They would literally feel like they were a different person from being in the same room, surprisingly to them, because so much energy, there's so much of a, just like how we can all, when we walk into a house and there's been a terrible argument or fight, you can feel the negativity in the room without even knowing if something feels off, right? It's been spoiled.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think so trust in that's a surrender. Trust in the fact that like, hey, and a lot of people have seen this happen with health. They decide, all right, I'm gonna stop eating junk food, or I'm gonna make these changes, or I'm gonna start exercising. And then eventually they notice it affects their partner or their family members. That's all you can do. You can't control them. And yeah, and that I think that's some kind of where we think, oh, I can only be around people just like me. I I don't know about that. I mean, Gurdjieff used people of opposites to antagonize each other. Like specifically, we talked about that. Like when he put groups together, he would want you to be with somebody that you weren't going to be gelling with. You know, because then there's no friction. Then there's no you're not going to have to change or grow in yourself. It's too easy. You're just coasting.
Right. And even when you surround yourself with like-minded people, so that's exactly what we're doing in the House of Free Will. I ask people to apply so that I know we are enough alike that we have a chance of getting along. But inevitably, even within that maybe broader parameters of the like-mindedness, it as it's evolving, people are finding their differences, right? There seems to be like nature commands again, maybe in these two polarities, that the like and the unlike are going to continue to coexist. So when you're around people who you are like, you're going to find your differences anyway.
Yeah, because so what you're talking about, it the House of Free Will would be an example of a common aim. The aim is to come together inside of a certain context, but inevitably because of the different types of people, they're going to naturally, as personalities and their essence, going to have some conflict.
Differences in conflict,
And
exactly.
yeah, but you wouldn't want to just like seek people that were toxic for you have to have a similar aim. So like in a Gurdjieff group, everyone's aim was to work with him to work on awakening, becoming man number 4. Inside of that context, now he's going to make sure that you're working with people that'll help, stir the pot a little bit.
Nice, nice. I like that. Yeah, exactly. Because if you just went around and hung around people who just they couldn't hear you when you talked, and that you just end up saying nothing, and
Yeah.
just not showing up, you'd be invisible to them.
Yeah, he called those like tramps, lunatics, and psychopaths. And he
Hmm.
said you can't be around any of them, and they have so you have to learn like, oh, that's not constructive. And that's where you have to develop that discernment. Like somebody might be loud and annoying to you, but still someone you should be around.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
You got to learn that palliative versus structural differences.
Nice, nice. I like that. Very good. Let's see. And quietly content bear is here. Nice to see you.
Hey.
And facets of the diamond. I think Michelle was talking about the first diagram of the circle, the Enneagram.
Oh
Did
yeah.
you Would you describe it that way?
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Each facet reflects the light a different way based on its geometry and the physics of the light moving through it. That's actually a really good way of thinking about it. If you could crystallize the Enneagram in 3D space in one moment, light's coming in, and based on its geometry, the light's doing different things and is perceived in a different way. It's the same source, but with different manifestations. So the the actual Enneagram itself would be our way of describing a living diamond like that that's existing up above through all planes. Things are emanating out from it, but you have the right. That's a good analogy. Yeah.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting that theory that relationships are like terrain. If your terrain is bad, the parasites show up. Yep.
Mhm.
Volcano, green, lava, orange. Not sure what that means exactly. That was probably an emoji. Yep. There you go. And Diane had a question. Could ignorance be partly the body's innate intelligence telling us we are not ready for the information?
So this comes down to the other day. I think we were you. I can't remember. It might have been no. We were in a meeting. We were in the your town hall meeting. We had a question about it's kind of like whether or not these programs are good or bad.
Right.
So this is going to overlap a little bit with that. The ignorance is the mechanicalness, right? Which is our default state. It exists for its own reasons, and according to Gurdjieff, as long like if we live it, we're serving nature, which is the primary purpose for mechanical man. So mechanical man has his own set of needs and who he's serving. But the idea is you could choose to not do that and to go a different path. Esoteric Christianity would call it the narrow path, right? Very few will find it. And so it's not in the in this modern psychology age we're in with the new age stuff. It's like everything's love and light, everything's positive. All this like you were talking about your death programs, Beth, all that was there because it loved me. It didn't love you. It had its own agenda, and it's serving an ascribed agenda from your environment, your parents. You develop these things to protect you in a mechanical way from all the other machines around you. Inside of that context, they work. Like if you learn to shame yourself, that works to serve your narcissistic abusive parents. And to some degree, you get some benefit, but ultimately it's to your detriment.
It's a payoff. I call it a quote unquote
Yeah.
payoff.
Yeah. It's the selling your soul to the devil, so to speak. It's like, oh, look, you got something, but in the broader text of it, it's not good at all.
It's a net loss.
It's a net loss. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. And then just to clarify, because if for those that aren't really into the Gurdjieff work or anything like that, if you say serving nature in the health freedom movement, for example,
They
they're
love
like,
it.
oh yes,
Yes.
they think you won, right? But
Yeah.
it's literally the other way around.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're always channeling a nature spirit and making clicking noises and telling you what colors you're supposed to wear. Yeah, it's like, oh wow, it's great. We're serving nature like the animals. Yeah, which is automatic. And that man, the idea is that man has a chance to be a self-evolving being. That's what separates us from all the animals and everything else. They can't do it. They exist completely to serve nature. We have a choice to go in a different path. In the work, it's learning to serve the sun. That makes sense.
Rather than be eaten by the moon. That
Be
we had
eaten by the moon.
about that. Yeah.
It's your choice.
Yeah.
Eat or be eaten. What do you want? Do you want to go up or down inside of the spiral of like the Enneagram? Which direction do you want to go?
Right. Yeah, that's like lizard consciousness, eat or be eaten, which
Yeah.
we otherwise are defaulting into. Yeah.
Yeah.
Learning to allow and let it move through like a wave. Yeah, allowance is a very good principle.
Mhm.
Let's see. I might go to the end of the comments. I missed so many.
Oh.
Even the government now admits that the biofield is real. That's interesting. How would Gurdjieff have talked biofield?
Oh, it's immensely important in his food. Okay, so gosh, to make this really simple for people that don't know. So we talked before. Okay, man in the planetary biological level is what's known as we're under 48 laws, which is the farthest that we can be um, before having a chance to come back up the scale. So we're at this point where we're about to drop into like total entropy and just be consumed. Now, above us is the planetary level, um, which only has 24 laws. There's more freedom there. Above that would be the solar level where there's only 12. Okay, and then it goes up from there. The galactic level, right? So um, the biofield would be the subtle energies that are beyond the normal bioelectric energy that your psyche runs on at a formatory sensory level. So you're when you're cogitating logic in your mind, which is what most of us are, if we're using our mind for anything other than daydreaming, we might be calculating. We're using something known as hydrogen 48 through the work. Oh, that we lose sound. Oh,
I'm going to pull the chart up. Does that help at all? Because I have a
you
chart
still
for
have
you
that
on
food
the
chart?
48
Yeah,
laws. Yeah. Okay.
Sure. Okay.
So
Yeah.
just keep going. Sorry, I shouldn't interrupt.
Okay. Yeah. No. So through what's known as the fourth way, the work, man can take what's called impressions, which are a high. So currently at the unconscious level, we talked earlier about our unconscious first shock is that we're taking oxygen and we're turning it into hydrogen 48 in our body, which is what our nervous system runs on and our cells and everything. Then by bringing in the self observation and the methodology of the work, like the system of practicing it, you can begin to refine what are known as impressions, which are a higher food source. And the impressions can be refined into hydrogen 24 and 12, and at some point even 6. And they resonate then as you see Earth 48. So at our biological level, our cognitive level, the same as the animals and stuff, we're at the 48. And we're using hydrogen 48. If we want to go up, the biofield is now we're getting into like what would be a subtle energy that's not necessarily directly measured the way they've measured um, like our electrical energy in our nervous system. But yes, there is evidence. Now, when you say science, I don't know what you mean. I think there's tons of evidence for that. Like, I mean, you can even get like Dysonian glass goggles and look at the biofield. I think orgone was proven in a lot of ways to exist, but it would be a little more subtle energy. It's going up past the normal energy, and as they go up, they're more fine, and they also have more potency.
Okay. And are they, so a lot of people do biofield tuning, for example. So with sound and
Mhm.
interacting with sound, is that something that Gurdjieff would have agreed with?
Yeah, I mean, he actually did some work with sound. Well, he met some people that had mastered it. It's kind of briefly mentioned in a couple of his. It's in Beelzebub's Tells for sure, because the sound correlates to the octaves, and they were using sound for like healing. Yes, so he would think that made sense. And my wife is a certified biofield tuning practitioner,
Ah, I
and
didn't know.
she, yeah, she's had there have been some pretty interesting experiences. So I think it's, yeah, I think he would have been fine with. I mean, that the way we know it today, biofield tuning, that word it didn't exist then, but
Hmm.
he was aware of frequencies and sound affecting the body. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, go with a paradigm that might be flawed, but that the movement between energies is not actually transformational. Say when I'll remove this just for the moment, and we can put it back
Mhm.
up if we need. And so that you can raise your frequency with a tuning fork, with a good talk with a friend, or something can inject energy, and then you feel more energy. But in my experience, people come down to the same defaults that they were in before. You hang around an enlightened master and you feel enlightened, and then you're not around them anymore, and the
Yeah.
mechanistic way of life starts to come into play again. So there's something, the actual transformation where you literally become, act differently, have a different experience than you were, you get different results than you were. to me is a matter of conscious choice.
Mhm.
And it's to do the work.
The work.
Right. So if someone came along and healed you, I don't know, I just don't quite buy that. Or am I or do you think it is possible, like it's just the grace of God and forces beyond us?
I think, are you're talking about, can someone, according to like Gurdjieff, could someone be healed?
Right. That's
Or,
kind of what you were saying, that certain sounds were being used and everything like
oh yeah, well yeah, but the point is that it doesn't change. Okay, so this would be like, that doesn't mean that the pattern in you is fixed. Like you're gonna, so someone could use their energy, if they were at that level of cultivating it, to make a positive impact on your body. But that doesn't mean that whatever, especially if it's like a chronic issue, it's just going to come back, because you know what I mean, like a, so
like a
you
chiropractor who puts you in a certain alignment, and then in a week
yeah,
you need to go back
you're
where
you're right back to where you were. Yeah, so like the healing, like things could be done. I mean, it's not common, but, and I mean, Gurdjieff was witnessed multiple times, healing people, but it was very rare that he did it. But the point is that doesn't change who you are. So you're still going to, yeah, it'd be like, if you take Reiki work, you familiar with Reiki?
yeah.
So like Reiki is, you're getting into those subtle types of energy, the biofield that she was asking about. All you're discharging possibly stuck energy in someone, and they might have a temporary positive experience, but that doesn't mean that you've like, oh, I healed their chronic kidney disease. That doesn't mean, and I feel like biofield tuning is similar in the sense that like you're helping in a more of a shorter term, because it's not coming from within them. So the source of the problem hasn't, just like with toxic bile paradigm, like the source of the problem hasn't been changed. So like you took away some, you alleviated it for a time. Is that,
And it
yeah.
gives an opportunity, right? It does present an opportunity, because again, the paradigm that I'm working in is the high energy. The purpose of that is to make the work easier to do, right?
Yeah.
When you're up in courage compared to when you're down in grief, it's much
Yes.
easier to think, okay, I'm going to go in and get some hard stuff now. And but you have to remember to do that. You have to want your freedom more than you want high energy.
Yeah. And like when you're working with someone, because of all of your experience and because of your presence, they could get to a elevated state or a release state much faster, right? But they can't do that on their own yet. It's kind of like that. Like because of what you're bringing to the table, they may get to have a big release in a 45-minute session with you that they've never experienced on their own yet. Now, it doesn't mean the goal would be, can they get there some point on their own? You see what I mean? But
Absolutely.
but it's, you're the factor at that point helping them. It's, yes, it's coming through them, but you're holding the space and bringing the wisdom to make sure that, to facilitate it. When Ouspensky had his first awakening experience with Gurdjieff, he was overwhelmed by it, didn't know what to do. And then later Gurdjieff, he realized like that it wasn't coming from him, that it was because Gurdjieff made sure that it happened. And he said, don't you want to learn now how to do this yourself? That was his response. Like he had to admit, like, yeah, I was part of helping you get there. Now you need to learn how to do it on your own.
Right.
Right. And yeah, that's
Right.
just,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I had a yoga teacher, Patabi Joyce, in the south of India, and he tied my body into knots that they wouldn't go into for years after, but I did eventually. And what it did is it gave me muscle memory.
Yeah.
Like he put me there. I had a picture, a photograph in my mind of that, and then I was able eventually to get back there on my
Yeah.
own. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yep. And Diane was going to ask about Eileen McCusick's work. Yeah. Yeah. She
Yeah.
she just
That's
released an album.
biofield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's sound to bring up good feelings, but also anger and feel the feel. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a skeptic, I'll say very quietly. And Achilles said, do you think there are similarities between Gurdjieff and Carl Jung? We actually had a interesting discussion. I had an interesting discussion with my AI about that, comparing the two works. Do you want to say something about that, Achilles?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I
I called
mean,
you Achilles. I'm sorry, Micah.
that's okay. You were reading there. Yeah. Um, so I will say this: there is similarity. There's overlap. There one of Gurdjieff's students, there's a guy named Morris Nickel who wrote the commentaries on the psychological teachings of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky. He is the only person that ever lived that's known that he was for 10 years he studied under Carl Jung. He was meant to take over his legacy. He was a practicing doctor and himself had his own medical practice. Then one day through studying Jung and all that, someone was like, well, there's someone else that's really into this type of stuff. This guy named P.D. Ouspensky, and he's written this book, and I really think you need to talk to him. He talked to Ouspensky, was really impressed. Ouspensky told him about Gurdjieff. He met Gurdjieff, and he left everything. He left Jung. He went and worked with Gurdjieff. He went to the Priory in France.
Wow.
Took his wife. He sold his entire business, and he said, in the Gospels, there's the pearl of great price. He said, I found the pearl of great price, and he sold everything, and he went and studied him. And I'm not saying like, oh, he's some, savior or something, but my point is there is similarity for sure. There are a lot of things that do overlap. There's congruency, but Gurdjieff, I think, as a person was just coming from a more deep, richer place of development with more experience. Jung was coming from a brilliant psychological perspective that he had come into, and I respect Jung a lot. I think there's a lot of great things. It's just Gurdjieff was someone who had developed something that no one had ever seen before.
Yeah. What was I just trying to remember if I'd been prepared for that answer, I could have gone back to some things. So my memory isn't super good. Let me see if I have any. No, I don't have any ready notes that I'm aware of here. But there was something that just occurred to me that Jung was really soft core compared to Gurdjieff's hardcore, and that it was about the shock and the growth rather than this integrate the shadow and be okay with the evil side. And there's a certain that is a step in a process for freedom, but it's not the end. It's just to be this mess of integrated garbage, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, maybe an analogy would be if you had a fitness instructor who was just like, hey, let's just move our body, and you're just kind of stretching and you're moving. It's well, that's positive, that's good. And then Gurdjieff would be like a crack SEAL team trainer, like you're going to be crying, but the results are going to be like this. They're not going to be parallel. It was like that. I mean, working with Gurdjieff was a nightmare. Right. Working with Jung would have been a positive, like, oh, this is like a, low-grade psychedelic art adventure, which it is, when you read his work. It's nothing bad. It's like he had a lot of valid points, but like Gurdjieff was like the drill sergeant, and you were gonna get whipped,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And was Gurdjieff aware of Jung as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was. Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
He didn't comment on Jung much, but I don't know that he had a problem with him per se. But it was just, again, Jung's coming from a theoretical and an artistic place. He's not wrong. I don't think Jung was wrong. Mm-hmm. It's just the difference is Jung was information and a little bit of an experience, and then Gurdjieff is like hardcore development, hardcore experience. Yeah. So this, it's a.
Yeah, totally different worlds. It made me feel again that Jung was more in the circles, and then Gurdjieff is just like, okay, that you got a takeoff point. And let's go. Let's do this.
Yeah, Jung's dream work and allegory abstract, and then Gurdjieff's dreams were just kind of like a waste of time. Like, okay, yeah, let's do way more than just dreams. So
right. Yeah, so interesting. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I've totally enjoyed it. It's possible Micah and I will be making an announcement coming up soon. We're not going to share anything about it at this point, just leave it a little bit mysterious, but there's something big in the works, which is pretty fun related to Micah's experience. And I want to let people know also that the next Journey Code training, which is my coaching certification training, is coming up starting in September with an orientation on the 16th, and then classes begin on the 23rd. And up until April 30, I am running an early bird that is not going to be published. So you won't find this at my website. You literally have to be either watching my live streams or on my email list. which you can get on by doing my King Hero Archetype quiz, by the way. So if you decide to have a conversation with me before April 30th and you sign up, then it is a $1,300 US savings for this time only. And just wanted to make sure I'm not keeping that a secret, because that date exists, and I will be sending an email this weekend with more information about how to actually not just do deprogramming work, but to set that as a life path, the way that you serve others and help them. To me, this is the way out. It's not the only way. Of course, there are more ways, but it's a fast way. It's the best way that I have learned. And if more people understood how to deprogram their own world and their own life, then we wouldn't be in this situation that we're in right now in this world. That's my opinion. What do you think, Micah?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's becoming aware, becoming conscious. Those are the congruencies, like I've noticed working with you, where your work overlapped. Like why we had these conversations in the first place was because I was working with, for those people, this might be the first time, I was working with Beth and noticed the patterns of all the Gurdjieff stuff that I studied and experienced. And so that's what started our series of conversations. So it's that path of becoming conscious. um, her system is very similar to a lot of the experiences of learning that you have a gap where you don't have to repeat your patterns, that there's a higher path, and it can be very healing. I've gotten a lot out of it, as well as the course, the creator code course. And that's been great, just to get people to a clean place so that they know what they're creating isn't coming with baggage. Like everything, if you've ever found yourself repeating the pattern of every time you start something new, the same thing happens in your business or your life, that's because there's some kind of pattern you're oblivious to, that mechanicalness. And that's where her course has been really great and fun. It seems like we're almost finished with it. So
Yeah, it's going to be
great.
the last class is coming up this week, and then we've got a retreat the following week to cap it off. So yeah, it's amazing. And is Journey Code exclusively for coaches? So it's exclusively for those that want to coach, although some people do it just for their own personal development. So, it is the deepest dive. It's a 7-month training. It is a very serious inward journey. People make the biggest transitions or the biggest transformations of any of the work that I do, because it's so concentrated. Excuse me. And because also, when you're setting out to help other people, your inner work becomes more important to you, because it's about accountability and integrity, and you can't do this work out of integrity. The moment you do it mechanically, and I've seen that a little bit in the last few days, just where there was literally a moment where something mechanically came out of my mouth, even though as a coach, it's not that. It's not a huge rocket science. It's not a massive, big script. The techniques are incredibly simple and straightforward. But when you are the one that's been hired to help somebody work in their own unconscious, that's highly nuanced. And you can't be mechanical in it and do it in a satisfying way for them or yourself. So having said that, it's totally open for anybody who's not already a coach. In fact, that can be preferable, because you don't have a whole lot of stuff to undo in the process. It can be a lot of unlearning when you've got skills that maybe won't match up with this work or even reality. But it is for people that generally want to become a coach, want to be able to do this work. Not all of them took it on as a profession, but they took it on in their personal life. They were able to do the coaching work for people that they cared about and wanted to support. And I do hope that people end up with a profession in the process, because it's very worthy and very needed. So thanks for that question. I appreciate it. I will share more about it in Creator Code as well. And yeah, even his name sounds hardcore. We're just back to Gurdjieff here. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I practiced spelling it. It's funny because everyone calls him G, and I thought, oh, that's because his name is hard to spell. But his first name is actually
George.
George. There you go. That's where G comes from, right?
No, actually,
No?
no. It's the last. So that's within the line of work, when somebody becomes a teacher or leads a group, the students would wind up calling them usually by one letter, and usually it's the letter of their last name. And it's part of the idea of disassociating with your identity. So like Ospensky would be known as O.
Ah,
Yeah, but yeah,
there you go. I would be B or M. I guess
yeah,
M. M for M.
probably am. But yeah, the idea is like it would just be a letter, and then it's like even more impersonal in a way.
Right. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, the whole process of de-identification, which might be new to some people. Some people are busy out there trying to get an identity. That's the thing about being a journey code coach. It's not to pick up a new personality or a new thing. And we can have those for other people. But if it's for you to build yourself up and think that you're somebody now, that it won't happen. That's not what we're doing there. The more I do this work, the more I offer this work, the more I disappear. So if that sounds like hell to you, chances are you probably won't like this. But that is, to me, freedom. The more I'm not there as an entity needing to interfere with every single bit of the process. A lot of it happens organically. The teachings are there, but the way that relationships play out, the way that your life evolves through it is extremely organic and can't be predicted. So it's not for the lighthearted, absolutely not. And yet it is also it's entirely facilitated. Nobody's expected to do this or show up and be so perfect or be so evolved or anything like that. That it's just the willingness and the desire for freedom can carry you through it. So very good. Diane says she'll be watching this episode again and again. Me too. I have that on my agenda. It's always a toss-up. Do I go and listen to myself and Micah again, or do I listen to Gurdjieff and that tales to his grandson, Beelzebub's tales to his grandson? Yeah. Every time I understand, I really lean in and like, oh my God, I understood a whole entire sentence. Yeah, it's really fun. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. And this will be an arc of a series. I don't know exactly what the one is next time, but I've got a plan where we're actually going somewhere, which is fun. Intentionally, we always go somewhere, but it's not always intentional. Micah, do you want to let people know how they could take you up on your work? Maybe there's somebody out there that wants to make a film, or I don't know if you do smaller like video projects for people or anything, but I think those are skills and talents. But the work that you have put in with Gurdjieff, your ability to recognize your own inner work, like honestly, especially working with men, seeing how difficult it is for them in particular to feel a feeling. You really are a gem, and I'm honored to host you in the House of Free Will for everything that you've contributed. And how would people take you up on working with you?
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be there. And if they want to contact me, yes. I mean, I've done a lot of if as far as film and video. I mean, that's been my professional main background for over 20 years. Um, I'm open to any collaboration that they want to do. I've done everything from music videos to commercials, corporate campaigns, films, TV shows, and taught it all. So, like, if you have a special inquiry there, that's fine. I've done a lot of acting coaching, audition tapes as well, taught but on the personal level, thank you for saying all that. I have coached. I do coach people sometimes one on one. Sometimes there have been little small groups if there's a couple people with overlapping interests. So if you're open, if you want to do that, sure, you can contact me. The email there is absolutely fine. You could also look me up if you join her Beth's House of Free Will. I think then everybody gets access to your Telegram. Right? Am I right?
Yes.
And I'm active there, and you can contact me there. You can also look me up on Instagram as a point of contact. I'll respond to messages there too.
Very good. That's awesome. So just having said that, I will share a link to the application for those that aren't yet a member. It's so fun in there. I love the discussions that we're having. Maybe we'll have a Beth of Fresh Air just on the discussions that we're having in the House of Free Will. Some really smart people. Did I give oh, no, that's actually the wrong link. That's application to work with me. You could also use that in the case that you wanted to do that. And this is the application to the House of Free Will, just to make sure we have enough in common that we will have fun together. And there is a starter course. So if anyone is brand new to the deprogramming work, I did create a more beginner friendly course called Deprogramming 101. You can find that at the link that I just posted there. And then the other starter course that I have is called Find Your Sacred Purpose. Creator Code was supposed to be kind of a starter course. It didn't turn out that way at all. I used it as an opportunity to really geek out and go deep into things. That doesn't mean that you can't get the basics out of it. It will be available. I'll start transforming it into an online course so somebody could come along and do it at their own pace once we're done in a couple of weeks. And so, yeah, I think that's it. Thanks again, everyone, for joining, having been here. I appreciate it. Thank you, Micah. Hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. And I'll set up a, so you have to stop that share. I'll set up my outro in just under 10 minutes or so. I don't have a system for this.
Well, thanks again for having me.
You are very welcome. Very welcome. What a pleasure. It's just the conversation never gets tiring for me. I never, that's one of the things I need to look forward to what I'm doing. If I have a client or I have a live stream or I have a course and I'm somehow dreading it and I don't want to do it and I'm in resistance, it's like, no, that we're not doing this. It doesn't mean that some feelings can't come up around it and I'd rather be on a beach or all of that kind of stuff is always like, don't get me wrong. It can be in the mix. Always have to work with that. But I genuinely look forward to talking to you today, and I got a lot out of it. So thank you very much, Micah.
Likewise, thank you for the great hosting, and I like the questions and everyone's feedback too in the forum.
Yeah. What a joy. Definitely. All right, everyone. Bye for now. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Lord and supporter of all, forever free from identity. Be well, I'm dwelling in you. Be well, I am dwelling in you. Be well, I am dwelling in you. Vidrashtanumanta Shivarta Gupta Maheshwara Paramatme Dijapi Yokto Deyasmin Purusha Para Deyasmin Purusha Para Deyasmin Purusha